Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. Respected Chief Guest, Shri Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry. Shri Rajiv Kaul, Chairman Emeritus, Board of Governors. Father Anthony R. Uvari, S.J., Vice Chancellor, XIM University. Father S. Anthony Raj, S.J., Registrar, XIM University. Members of the Board of Governors of XIM University. Guests, members from the media, faculty, staff, and students. On behalf of XIM University, I, Rachita Nanda, extend a very warm and cordial welcome to each one of you for this Foundation Day lecture. Thank you, sirs. Now, may I please request everyone to be seated. This year, we are indeed honored to have Shri Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry, as the Foundation Day speaker. Shri Chandrajit Banerjee has been associated with CII for over 33 years and has served as its Director General since 2008. He is responsible for the overall operations of CII. He is also a member of several important government advisory bodies at the national and state levels. As DG of CII, he is in charge for leading and contributing to many policy-level dialogues and discussions to enhance the competitiveness and development of India. We at XIM University are privileged and delighted to have you amongst us today, sir. We gladly welcome Shri Rajiv Kaul, the longest-served chairman of Xavier Institute of Management and the first chairman of our university. Indeed, it is an honor to have you amongst us this evening, sir. We cordially welcome our Vice Chancellor, Father Anthony R. Uvari. Welcome, Father. Now, we begin this evening's proceedings with a prayer song by the choir. May I now please request the audience to rise.
मुझे तुमने दाता बहुत कुछ दिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है। मुझे तुमने दाता बहुत कुछ दिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है। न मिलती अगर दी हुई दात तेरी, तो क्या थी ज़माने में औकात मेरी। तुम्ही ने तो जीने के काबिल किया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है। मुझे तुमने दाता बहुत कुछ दिया है। मुझे है सहारा तेरी बंदगी का, है जिस पर गुजारा मेरी जिंदगी का। मिला मुझको जो कुछ तुम्ही से मिला है, तेरा शुक्रिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है। मुझे तुमने दाता बहुत कुछ दिया है। मिला मुझको जो कुछ बदौलत तुम्हारी, मेरा कुछ नहीं सब है दौलत तुम्हारी। उसे क्या कमी जो तेरा हो लिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है। मुझे तुमने दाता बहुत कुछ दिया है। मेरा ही नहीं तू सभी का है दाता, तू ही सबको देता, तू ही है खिलाता, तेरा ही दिया मैंने खाया पिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है, मुझे तुमने दाता बहुत कुछ दिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया है, मुझे तुमने दाता बहुत कुछ दिया है, तेरा शुक्रिया 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 है।
Please be seated now. Thank you, choir, for the devotional invocation. May I now request Shri Rajiv Kaul to welcome the esteemed chief guest and the audience. Sir, please.
Our young and distinguished chief guest and a personal friend of mine, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, the Director General of CII, my colleagues on the Board of Governors of XIM University, Father Paul Fernandez, Vice Chancellor of our university, members of the faculty, our bright young students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with the greatest of pleasure that I extend the warmest of my congratulations to Chandrajit Banerjee and to everybody for being here to witness this great Foundation Day 2021. A very special welcome goes out to our dynamic chief guest, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee. I have been indeed fortunate to be a friend of his for the past 3 decades or just over, when he joined CII as a young executive. And let me tell you that he is an exceptional individual. He works very hard. He networks extremely well with not just members, but with the government. And he delivered year after year, vertical after vertical. I think the first time I met him, he was involved in the power sector. And then he went to so many other various parts of CII. And every time that he moved one step higher. And it was, I think, in the year 2008 that he took over the overall charge of CII. And they were very difficult shoes to fill in, because in those days, Mr. Tarun Das was a doyen of Indian industry. He was well known by everybody, be it political, be it an ordinary person at the lower level of the corporate world. And to fill in his shoes, it was extremely difficult. In fact, 1 or 2 people for short periods tried to fill in his shoes, but did not succeed. Then came young Chandrajit Banerjee, and he fitted into the shoes so well, and with each passing days, he is now gradually not just filling in, but should I say, I shouldn't be saying that because Tarun Das is really my mentor, but in a way, he is surpassing him, because the days are getting indeed more and more complex today, be it on the global scene, be it on the domestic scene, be it because of the pandemic. But he has really been truly outstanding. I think in the introduction it's already said that he is a trustee of many trusts, he is on the board of many institutions of the private sector and the government and joint sectors. He is on the board of governors of various foundations. He's been honored by the prime ministers and kings of various countries. So let me not delve into it. But what I would like to say, particularly to my young friends, that Chandrajit Banerjee is actually a true role model which all of you should try and emulate. For he is a leader with a very clear vision, and not just for CII, but indeed for our country as a whole. He is a leader who all along has been working with his team, working with the membership to build confidence and consensus. He's been a person who keeps inspiring his team and all those around him. And let me tell you, to inspire the 9,000 odd direct corporate members we have of CII is not an easy task. We have the very large members, we have the very, very small members. In fact, majority of our members, I think, are SMEs. And, they have a very, very tough time. And he has to sort of motivate them, take care of their needs, and he has to do that with compassion. He is a person with the highest level of integrity and a leader who contributes in great deal and great amount to society as a whole, to nation building in its totality. And yet, he is a person who is full of humility. Above all, he is a Xaverian. And Chandrajit, I welcome you and I welcome our true Xaverian friend to a hall where we are all Xaverians. Welcome to you. Friends, now let me request our chief guest, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, to come and say a few words. Is that the correct order? Have I messed up something? Oh, we have to give him a doctorate. Well, you're going to get your little sort of recognition before you speak. So are you going to come and give it? All right. We hand over to the young, charming lady then.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for the warm welcome address. XIM University is enormously pleased to confer honoris causa in business management on Shri Chandrajit Banerjee. I call upon our senior faculty member, Professor Amar KJR Nayak, to read out the citation. Sir, please.
Conferment of honorary doctorate in business management on Shri Chandrajit Banerjee. Shri Chandrajit Banerjee is a graduate in economics honors from St. Xavier's College, Calcutta, and a postgraduate MS in economics with specialization in economics of planning and econometrics from the University of Calcutta. For his contribution to the economic growth of Indian industries, Shri Banerjee has been honored with honorary doctorate D.Phil honoris causa from Amity University, Noida, Uttar Pradesh on December 10, 2019. Shri Banerjee has been with the Confederation of Indian Industries, CII, for over 34 years. He held several leadership positions in key sectoral verticals of manufacturing, services, agriculture, and life sciences, as well as the SME sector. He holds and has held trusteeship and board member posts in many institutions, which include Institute of Economic Growth, Global Economic Innovation and Technology Alliance, Bharatiya Yuva Shakti Trust, Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers, World Economic Forum, Global Agenda Council of India, Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council, and Indian Institute of Management. He is also a member of the Managing Committee of Sportscom and Governing Council member of Healthcare Sector Skill Council among many associations and organizations. Since the year 2008, Shri Banerjee has served as the Director General of CII. As the Director General of the Confederation of Indian Industry, India's apex industry association, Shri Banerjee has been working closely with the Government of India on behalf of the Indian industry to create and sustain an environment conducive to the economic development of India. As the DG of CII, that consists of over 300,000 enterprises, both private and public sector, including SMEs and MNCs, Shri Banerjee has gracefully served these engines of economic growth in India. He has been responsible for leading and contributing to many policy-level dialogues and discussions to enhance the competitiveness of India incorporation that contributes to the industrial growth and development in India. Shri Banerjee is also secretary to many bilateral CEO forums constituted by the Government of India in countries like Australia, France, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, Sweden, South Africa, etc. For his dedication and commitment on building bilateral relationships, Shri Banerjee has been honored with the China-India Friendship Award by the Chinese Premier for his contributions towards the development of bilateral ties between India and China. He was conferred with the decoration of Knight Commander by His Majesty the King of Spain in recognition of his meritorious achievements and exceptional contributions towards promoting relations between India and Spain. XIM University recognizes the spirit of Majis in Shri Banerjee's endeavors to make CII an effective agent of industrial development in India and in building international partnerships of Indian industries with countries around the world. XIM University is pleased to award Sri Chandrajit Banerjee the Doctor of Business Management honoris causa on December 11, 2021 at Bhubaneswar.
I request our Chairman Emeritus, Shri Rajiv Kaul, and our Vice Chancellor, Father Anthony R. Uvari, to confer the honorary doctorate on Shri Chandrajit Banerjee and to felicitate with him for gracing the occasion. Thank you, sirs. Thank you, everyone. Now, I would like to take the privilege of inviting Shri Chandrajit Banerjee, the chief guest and speaker for the evening, to address the gathering. Sir, please.
Thank you. Mr. Rajiv Kaul, the Chairman Emeritus of the Board of Governors, Father, the distinguished board members, faculty, dear students, and very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Very good evening, and thank you very much for this honor. It's indeed a great privilege and pleasure for me to be with you today for your Foundation Day. Nice courtesies, very nice words by you, Mr. Kaul. Thank you very much. Much of it I don't deserve, but thank you very much for being so kind to me. XIMB, SIC has really been distinguished as one of the leading centers, if I can say, of educational excellence, and I really felicitate you and your outstanding achievements, Father. And being a Xavier myself, as Mr. Rajiv Kaul mentioned, it is really a special moment for me to participate with you on this very important occasion. And I am truly humbled and honored to accept the honorary doctorate of the XIMB. My sincere gratitude to all the board members and to all the faculty for conferring this onto me. I would say that this is not a conferment on me personally, but as Mr. Kaul and others spoke, rather a validation of the Confederation of Indian Industry work, which has been led by some great stalwarts like Mr. Kaul himself to play a part of the country's development journey, if I can say. And we were established, we are not so young, we were established 126 years back. I'd also like to thank Father and the board for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with a very, very vibrant student community that I see before me. As I see this group before me, I thought of sharing two quotes. When I was preparing my speech, I thought of two very important quotes, which I think has bearing to the careers of our very young friends who are going to craft, if I can say, the country's future. Winston Churchill once said, and I quote, "Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts," unquote. I'm no fan of Churchill, but this quote of his has really helped me, if I can say, quite a bit in my life's learnings. And then again, Steve Jobs once said, and I quote, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do that great work is to love what you do," unquote. I believe very strongly that one must enjoy what one is doing. And if Mr. Kaul was saying 3.5 decades of our association is just because of the love of what one has been doing. And if you are not enjoying your work, you must change it. Many choose fields of study, you have chosen it, and careers, because some of our elders, some of our well-wishers tell us which field to actually choose. Actually, within a management course, so to say, finance and marketing always seem to be the most chosen fields. And they are indeed very, very good, very important streams, but there are so many others. Operations, technology, HR, all are exciting. The same for choice of careers, if I can say. Choosing a good organization is the most critical point that all of you would soon be faced with. Look beyond the name. Focus on the content of the job, and see if you agree with its values and with its culture. As freshly graduating MBAs, you will be familiar with the theory of motivation. And just to remind you that factors split into motivation factors and hygiene factors. Money is a hygiene factor. You would be dissatisfied without it, but even if you do have it, you may still not be happy and satisfied with the work and the organization. Satisfaction requires motivation, and the most important enduring motivation factor is the content of the job itself and the value systems of the place of the work. To that, I would add the kind of people one works with on a daily basis. If those that you are working with on a daily basis are right, if one works with a good people whose companies you are enjoying, the ethos of the organization and the content of the job is such that the work is challenging and one learns all the time, then of course that will provide its own reward. Today I wish to share with you where we have come as a nation in the last 75 years, and as you know that we will soon be celebrating 75 years of our independence, and we call it India at 75, and what we may aspire to do in the next 25 years, that really belongs to the people in this auditorium mainly. And that would help you, I feel, hopefully, help you find your calling in life and your career choices. India of my dreams, India of your dreams, India at 100, if I can say. That's what I would try to speak on in the next few minutes, and I'd really like to talk about it to you, who will be the most important and the largest beneficiaries of India at 100. Not, though Mr. Kaul described me as young, but I would probably not be the one who would reap the benefits of India at 100 like you. I would have loved the opportunity to sit with you in a sort of a visioning exercise to chart out the collective aspirations, if I can say, of the next 25 years, but that would probably have to wait for another occasion. But in that time that I have, let me share some thoughts that I hope you would resonate with. As a nation, we have been truly traversed, we have traversed, I believe, a very long journey. Most of the students, my colleagues here today, would not believe what we and some of us have faced in the older generation. Mr. Kaul and I, Father, many of us in this hall would remember a time when we had to wait for a few years for a phone connection. We used to say, my PP number is such and such. And it was many more years after ordering a car before we got a delivery of it. And by the way, we had only 2 car models to choose from. Today, we're addicted to our phones, and that pretty much controls actually our lives, if I can say. And we can divide the history of India's independence journey in many parts. But let me, for the purpose of simplification, choose the first 60 years, the next 15 years, that is the point of where we are, India at 75, up to the current year, when we are celebrating that, and I'll count about what we can look at for the next 25. Some of India's achievements in its first 60 years, in 2007, when we completed 60 years of our independence, were probably much beyond the dreams of our founding fathers in 1947. One, we demonstrated really to the world that an emerging economy like ours can deploy democracy in the path of its development. Second, to me, India has a large developing economy, undertook a range of reforms which set us on a path of growth. The policies before 1991, many of you have read in your books, some of us have experienced it, some of us have seen through those times, firmly established at that point in time India's self-reliance as an economy, and the 1991 reforms took us on a new journey of globalization. I just spoke about the lack of phones. The young people here in this room know in India that is the second largest phone manufacturer in the world. Third, our immense advantages as a knowledge and a digital economy. These were recognized, it's been pretty much recognized by the world as we have emerged as a major software exporter for the entire world. Institute of Education Excellence like this have been set up, and our managers and engineers are today making us proud as they reap the rewards of their education in giant global companies. Some of them have become household names, and you know each one of them. Fourth, India's prowess in space and nuclear technology. That was built up to a place for us to be in the select League of Nations, which is phenomenal achievement of our scientific community. 5, if I can say, Indian industry, which I represent, had already commenced significant initiatives in quality management, an area that global industry had not fully internalized till that point in time. And quality management, in fact, became a movement, and several Indian companies, Indian firms, had already started competing for a very prestigious Deming Award. I don't know how many of you have heard about it, for quality, which is awarded by a Japanese firm called JUSE, J-U-S-E, which stands for Japanese Union of Scientists and Engineers. The first Indian company to receive the Deming Award was way back in 1998, only the third company outside the Japan to do it. I'm sure you know about this. Deming Award is like a Nobel for Indian industry. 6 Indian companies had already embarked upon, by themselves, if I might say, on environmental management and climate change mitigation, much before the imperatives for the world had been really understood. Go back 20 years, exactly 2001, the Green Business Center, a center was set up in Hyderabad, and it was inaugurated by the President of India and President of another country. There started movement, when we started the green movement in India from amongst Indian businesses. And today, believe it or not, today green buildings are really a preferred choice, and we have almost 8 billion square feet, 7.84 billion square feet to be sort of precise, of registered green buildings, green homes in the country. And what is great in this is it's probably the second or the third largest in the world that we have that. And we celebrated many of these, the 6 of that I mentioned, and many other achievements till 2007, with a number of events that we were doing in India when India was at 60, so we called it India at 60, and we were celebrating all of that across the world and in India in different parts of the country. But one event in 2007, and I'm sure Mr. Kaul would probably recollect it, which stood out in my mind and shaped the next 15 years from the perspective of Indian industry, again, as I repeat what I represent. It was a session that we were organizing in New York, celebrating India at 60, when, again, one of the management gurus of the world, Professor C.K. Prahlad, he was with the University of Michigan, one of the most renowned professors of management. He came just, if I can say, blew my mind and many of us mind just away. He said that leadership is about the future, and the future is about the change and hope. Dr. Prahlad aspired for stretched targets for the country for 2022, that is India at 75, and asked us to dream big and look at it from that perspective for the future. He said that while you are celebrating India at 60, I would rather say, look at India at 75. And that's how the journey of ours, Indian industry, started to think about, let's look at 75. Tremendous progress has been made since then, and by the Indian industries whose leaders are here with us, like Rajiv. I see my very good friend Kamal also here, has played a very major role in the transformation of the country. This year, actually, 2021, as we look at India at 75, there are so many areas where our country today is number 1 or number 2 in the world, providing solutions for global challenges. India is the first, you know that because of the times that we are living in, is the first, if I can say, in vaccine production, a fact that was little considered before the pandemic. It is the first in software export, and has been indisputably so far for the last 20 years we have been having that position. This too served us very well in the pandemic crisis when we helped the world with many, many new software solutions. India is also the top producer of the world in many agricultural products, including spices, milk, various fruits, which is made possible, of course, by a very phenomenal collaboration which has evolved over the last few years between the farmers and the Indian industry. And when I travel, say for instance to Middle East, to Dubai, one thing that strikes me is how much Indian films, so to say, are watched, enjoyed, and this is true for so many other parts of the world. One of my colleagues narrated a story to me which is just about a few years old, 3 years old probably. He had landed in St. Petersburg in Russia, place that I go every year because there is a very important industry get-together. And he took a taxi to the hotel. And it was an early morning arrival, so the taxi ride was just about 40 minutes. And in this drive, the Russian driver, who did not speak a word of Hindi, sang on a very old Hindi song all along, right from the airport to the hotel, aided, of course, by his car stereo, seeing that my colleague was an Indian. He saw that, he understood that, and with almost exact pronunciations, besides, of course, the melody. And my colleague was so much stunned and couldn't believe how deep the soft power of India goes into terms of cultural influence. And when it comes to the second rank in the world too, India has many, many achievements to count, and many of it you are aware of: steel production, road network, mobile phone market, internet users, agricultural products, rice, wheat, milk, so on. And we have the second highest footprint of, as I talked to you about, the green building earlier, and a remarkable outcome of the green movement since then. One other fact I'd just like to mention, and I touched upon it earlier, you know, I talked about the Deming Prize that company won in 1998. Today is the second highest in the world. Today we are the second highest in the world in terms of the recipients of the Deming Award. That shows the quality and the competitiveness of Indian industry. This is a tremendous achievement of our Indian corporates, our Indian firms, which has demonstrated phenomenal capabilities of theirs. And I believe so. You know, sometimes we say that our products are so much competitive, could be the most competitive in the world in many ways when it comes to the factory gate. But from factory gate to the port and way beyond, that's where we need to work upon further. The major part of the success over the last 15 years, I was talking about India at 70 and India at 60 and India at 75, has been actioned by, I believe, the human talent capacity of India. And the role of human capital and India's rich human resources has really truly driven us to where we stand today. Knowledge-rich, technology-based, talent-driven, and that's what made me say what I have said in the last few minutes, because this is, I believe, the future of the country. Now, I'd like to compliment really the teachers, the educationists, the faculties of leading colleges like XIMB, of course, who have endeavored to unleash the vast power of our youth. The knowledge leaders who have devoted themselves to empowering the next generations are really, truly the people who have catalyzed India's progress. And I really salute those sitting amongst us today for their passion to teach. As I move to the next part of my talk, and I'll talk about the next 25 years, and I must mention that COVID has given us a glimpse of the dystopic future that we had all read in science fiction and fantasy novels. But with disruptions really comes clarity, allows us to look at things in new perspective, and it also allows us to dream of growth curves which are sort of discontinuous, if I can say. Let us have a simple dream for India. Clean air and water for all Indians, and India where all the children are well nourished and are able to go to school. All youth go to college or work and pursue their passions and dreams, which I said in the beginning. The sick get medical attention, and the elderly are not so lonely. I therefore dream of an India where all are Indians first and take pride in being Indian, take pride in democracy, diversity, culture, and at the same time embrace the best that the world has to offer for us. I dream of an India where quality public good does not have to be necessarily provided by private entities. In most parts of the, as you know, we should not have to depend on private provisioning of high quality public good. However, partnerships are to be encouraged, and I strongly believe in it. Partnership between the government and the private sector, very importantly between the government and the civil society, between the private sector and the civil society. We need to build that trust between the private sector and the civil society also. And it is easier said than done, but I'm convinced that we can have an Indian way of delivering these models of partnership which would be unique. And it is really up to you, my young colleagues in this room, the empowered youth of India, the future of business leaders, and the generation which is taking on the baton of taking India forward to realize these dreams. In my interactions, many interactions, some of which Mr. Kaul referred to when he was talking about what the journey that we have really gone through in the last many decades, I find young, innovative people to be full of idealism, enthusiasm, creativity, willing to think differently, very importantly, willing to take risks. And I'm sure that many of you are thinking about setting up your own businesses. You want to be an entrepreneur. That's a great trend. In my time when I was young, one was cautious of being an entrepreneur. At this point in time, or a point of time in our country and the world, especially in our country, many of you are dreaming to be entrepreneurs. We, if I may say, might see one of you as the president of CII one day. Mr. Rajiv Kaul was the president many years back, so I hope you would also be. There is a future president here. But more importantly and seriously, I hope that some of you would enter into policy making in some form. That's very, very important. One of the key drivers, if I can say, for ambition of India at 100 would be through leadership in many of these areas that I spoke of. But let me now come to another very important area, that is technology, science and research. So what quantitative targets that we can really set for ourselves at 100 when we talk about a more technologically evolved nation, a nation which is evolved through innovation and research. And that's something that I would really request all of you to look at, take a target that India should be in the league of the top 5 innovation nations by 2047. Believe me, it's possible. We are at this point in time around 46 in the world. It's possible if we can. Indian industry and all of you who are going to be involved in the Indian industry, we need to invest in science and research. We need to invest in R&D. We need to take it to at least about 3.5% of our GDP. We are abysmally low, and that's where I see the private sector needs to do a lot of catch up in terms of investment into R&D. I see a lot of opportunity in setting up, if I call it amongst my colleagues as a national research quad, the third largest for India at 100. Could be an establishment of this research quad. And the 4 pillars, if I can talk about, is industry, academia, where I'm speaking, research labs, and startups. And this is a very, very important collaboration that I would look forward to. And I really am talking over here because many of you would have to play that role in the years to come. And the fourth on that front is, if I can say, enhance the gender equality in STEM. While I've been speaking, I have been trying to look at the diversity, and that's going to be very, very critical for our country as we go along. Science, technology, energy, engineering, and mathematics, the STEM, we need to see to it how we leverage it for more gender equality. So having said all of this, we really take pride in our country, in the type of advances, if I can say, that we have made over the last few years. But let me just try to wind up by touching upon a few very important points. Number one, first is think big, aspire big, and do that with confidence. As you know, India's vaccination program for COVID, the largest in the world, driven really by indigenously manufactured vaccine, is a phenomenal example, according to me, of what thinking big can help us achieve. And at the onset of the pandemic, India did not manufacture, and I know, and Mr. Kaul would probably recollect, the type of pain that we went through. Kamal, you know as to how we were looking out for PPE kits or ventilators, but Indian industry really played such a phenomenal role to see that we not only produced, but we also serviced the world. Second, really let us look at how we can have a goal and purpose in what we do. The institution that I belong to, which has been talked about a bit, CII, we believe that our goal and purpose is to contribute to nation building. And this goal determines what we do and how we do it. Our policy work is guided by what is good for India. I want to dwell on it for a second. And I'll, again, invite Mr. Kaul to go back down his memory lane. He was associated pretty much strongly in leadership positions within CII at that point in time in the 1990s, when liberalization had just commenced, and I spoke about it. A CII delegation met with the government to advocate opening up of the steel sector. The delegation was headed by that time chief of Tata Steel, which then enjoyed monopoly in the sector. You would recollect that. This was a man who thought that for a larger good rather than his own company. The rest, of course, as you know, is history. So that's the way I guess corporate India and all of you could look at this nation. The third point, be conscious of your responsibility to society and the people around you. Mr. Tata, Ratan Tata, whom all of you know, once said, and I quote again, business need to go beyond the interest of their companies to the communities they serve, unquote. Businesses are indeed interdependent with societies, and if societies flourish, so will businesses. And give back just not at the corporate level, but at the individual employee level as well. For example, through an employee volunteering program, much can be achieved. Be sensitive, team leaders, all of you, and colleagues, to the people that you will work with. Build an organization culture that creates a sense of belongingness and sense of being cared for is what I would really talk to you about. Fourth, never stop learning. And as I say, we all learn every day. As you graduate from this very, very prestigious institution, let this not be the end of your learning, but the end of only a chapter in your life's book of learning. The attitude will help you achieve all your goals in life. And fifth, and my last point, of course, and I repeat, and I had said somewhere in the beginning, be ethical in whatever you do, as an individual, as a team member, and as a leader. If you lose, as a leader, as a player, if we lose our moral compass, then it is not just a personal defeat, but I believe it's a national loss. And I'm sure that the past 2 years have been extremely challenging for each one of us. However, looking at the glass is always half empty or half full, and I would like you to consider this, that look at it as a half full perspective. Despite all the chaos and the devastation the pandemic brought in its wake, it also reminded us of our inner strengths and resilience. I talked about it, and that have helped each one of us overcome the challenges that the pandemic threw our way. Your graduation today is indeed such an important milestone of your life goals that you have achieved in spite of several disruptions that has been caused during the pandemic. This is a testimony to that resilience. With these, I'd like to really leave you to think about India at 100 and how you would like to see India in 2047, as well as what would be your role in that India of 2047. I have deliberately avoided putting numbers and targets, of what could be our targets as we aspire for a great India for 2047, with the hope that in your own way, you would do so with your minds, with your groups. And I would like to be involved at some point in time with you. We did this exercise in 2007. We went to several hundred districts in the country when we sort of, with different stakeholders, talked about India at 75, when we were India at 60. And sooner or later, we will go to different parts of the world, different parts of the country, with multi-stakeholder consultations on what it could be to take us to our India of 100 to which we will all belong. And I love you to be a part of that multi-stakeholder visioning exercise at some point in time in some way. Dream big, and that's half the journey covered is what I believe. My thanks again to XIMB for inviting me, and to all the young minds and people here for listening to me so patiently. I wish you good fortune and a life of innovation, passion, and of freedom, and the aspiration to make India the country of our dreams. All the very best to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chandrajit, for such an inspirational address. Greatly appreciate your coming over and spending time with all of us. And I don't know whether you'd like to take questions by continuing to stand there or sitting here and taking it. You can sit and take it as well. Yeah, all right. So, friends, I think after this tremendous sort of address and lots of points and lots of thinking that he has conveyed to all of us, who would like to ask the first question? Do raise your hands, and I think a microphone will reach you. Is that right, Father Tony? I think a mic will reach them. Yeah? Or will they have to come up here? What is the... Mics are there, all right. So the mics will reach you. And I think whilst I see a few hands there. Can you just take it at the back, please? I think the backbenchers are going to ask you the first question, CB.
First of all, I would like to thank you for such an inspirational talk. And secondly, sir, during the pandemic times, we all heard about how the supply chain would come towards India or Vietnam or countries apart from China. So what are some of the key policy changes that India should take so that it becomes a leader in supply chain management and supplies?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, this was a huge opportunity that came up India's way over the last 1.5 years or so, and the window of that shall be open for another few months or a year to come, when value chains, as you said, are getting firmed up. And at this point in time, there is a lot. One of the single most, if I can say, there is a single most important thing that India could do to see how we can attract more investments with China Plus One is, of course, how it becomes competitive for us to do business in India. Competitive in terms of the cost of logistics, say, for instance, the ease of doing business, which is, as I'm sure you have heard so much about it. So on the ground, those needs to be reality, and those needs to be really something which is felt by the investor, be it a domestic or in your case, as you are mentioning, foreign investor or whoever is choosing to invest in India. So we need to ensure that both at the federal level, that's a central level, or at the state level, we are able to address this entire issue of ease of doing business. Very importantly, actually at the ground level, at the district level, that's exactly where your investments are going to take place. And of course, this entire cost of doing business, which is both. So competitiveness is going to, how competitive we become and how quickly our policies framework can make our industry or facilitate our industry becoming more competitive is what's going to decide. The world's going to decide that way.
A very good evening, sir. Thank you for the speech. It was very motivating and insightful. Sir, you spoke about how we should be moving forward as a nation. You shared your dream 25 years down the line. You spoke about how the youth should be very passionate about what they're doing. We should move forward technologically. But because of COVID, we have become more of a closed nation where some even feel that we are moving backwards instead of moving forward. So, sir, I would like to know what are your insights or inputs on the same?
So it's a very tricky situation at this point in time. I've been talking to many policymakers, so to say, and others on how do we keep moving as an economy, as in a country. And as you rightly said, countries are closing borders. There are so many restrictions. So would we be having a free movement of ideas, goods, services, people and therefore would the economy really suffer? Yeah, and it's a very, very important point, and which we are all faced with. So at this point in time, and what we would all try to do, should try to do, is to see how we learn to live with a disease like COVID. So it's not something which is going to go away tomorrow. So it's something for which we need to have, we need to have, like what we are seeing, some of us who are still traveling internationally, as to how do we have strict protocols yet let economy move on. Like supply chains should not be broken. So we need to see to it that we learn to live with COVID, we learn to manage COVID in times to come, and we are able to keep economy and livelihood as a result of it moving. So this is going to be very critical. So more stricter protocols, but obviously certain ways. There is asking this question, let me deal it with an anecdote. The World Economic Forum, which happens in Davos every year, in the third week of January, even if we go ahead with it this January in Davos, the type of protocols that we need to have around it, should we cancel it, or should we let it happen with much more checkings, much more balances, letting other countries come in? So all of that is going to be more important. So unfortunately, you and I will have to go through maybe 3 or 4 RT-PCR tests if we go to another country and come back. But maybe that's the way we'll have to live for some time. But the important issue is, let things move on, let the country move on, let the economy move on. That's going to save livelihoods, and that's how the economy will move forward. Learn to live with COVID.
Thank you, sir.
So, sir, just we saw the CEO of Twitter changing to a person of Indian origin. So it's very regular that we see Indians taking up these higher positions of big major companies, but we hardly see any Indian companies give that tough competition or battle to the foreign companies. So what could be or should be done so that we reach that position where we produce companies like those?
So I think I've got the hang of your question. How Indians are in top positions of some of the best companies of the world, but when will we own those big companies, and when will they be housed in India? I think one of the things that I touched upon when I was speaking was how Indian industry, and it's not a responsibility of the government alone, but I think it's a responsibility of, it's a collective responsibility. It's a responsibility of Indian industry. It's a responsibility also of Indian industry and academia working together. So I look at a situation where, as I mentioned when I was speaking, how we can really take up our spend on research and development. How does Indian industry invest on research and development? Some of the world's companies that you are referring to, their headquarters of research and development are based in India. So why can't Indian companies also aspire to invest much more in R&D? So I think that is going to be a key component of making Indian companies, Indian industry, real global leaders. And I think that's a very, very important point. While there has been many debates as to what can incentivize R&D. The best incentivization for R&D just is not tax concessions and stuff like that, which will make them put the money into R&D. But it's actually the competition, it's survival, it's the future, and the realization that would make them invest more and more into R&D. And I really, because I am in an institute of excellence, if I can say, there's a huge role of joint research and development between our academia and the private sector. And of course, the government can play a huge role in this too, as we move along. So I think that's going to be one of the key areas for us to be global leaders, besides things like we talked about cost of doing business or competitiveness and things like that.
Would you say that, if I may intervene, would you say that the startups coming in will be, in a way, a major trigger for this? Because one of the problems that people have had, other than the general attitude, was having to deploy large funds. And startups, because of the very high valuations they have, they invariably sit on a large pool of funds. And typically they are new thinking. So in any case, they are in a way top of a new idea or a new thought. So they will have resources, and I think that may be something you'd like to touch on. I mean, the future of India through startups.
Absolutely, and you're right. And how many startups have we seen becoming unicorns in the period of pandemic in India? Just phenomenal. And I think that's again shows and I spoke about the human resources of India. So we have a phenomenal strength in terms of human resources, and today the type of, and the entire the entire gamut, if one can say, or the entire space of startups are actually going to be people like you, and there we see again policy enabler in terms of, as you grow, as you become a unicorn, there are so many soonicorns, soon to be unicorns in India, so that they are sort of, one of the things that we are working on from what you said is how we can see larger companies, large companies, say 100 large companies or 500 large companies are able to work with these startups in terms of mentoring, in terms of even also sort of incubating and making them grow, how the marriage can take place between a large company, between several large companies and the startups, to see to it that they can gain from these large corporates. Besides, of course, the policy architecture, which is also going to be important. In fact, you're saying this, and what Mr. Kaul said, and I just want to underline, the policy level, there are a lot of changes that we will go through to see how startups can grow in India, how startups can remain within India, how startups don't get only brought up by those large funds outside. But even within CII, one of the things that we are changing our memorandum and rules. I mean, as it's so important a point to see how we can give space to the startups coming into the CII's mainstream, which has been traditionally large, small and medium companies, which Mr. Kaul also spoke about. So how do we give space to them and for them to coexist? And I went to, just before the pandemic started in March, when last year's March, I was in Bhutan with a few startups from India. And these are, household names type of startups, which they've become. And they were all 26, 27-year-old boys and girls who are actually leading some of the best companies, best startups of the world, if I can say, very well-known names. And they are actually, like you, they have not traversed the journey of corporate India like what Mr. Kaul or my friend Kamal has done. But they need not sort of go through that path on their own. There is so much of richness in Indian industry which needs to be sort of understood or rather collaborated upon. So and that can something which can make a huge difference in the years to come.
Thank you, sir. That does give us a right path for, let's say, moving to India at 100.
Next.
Good evening, sir. So first of all, I would like to thank you for this enriching session. So my question is, how will India be benefited from this pandemic-affected supply chain? Can you please put your thoughts on this?
Is the question, how would India be benefited from
this pandemic-affected supply chain? Yes, sir.
Yeah? Did I hear it right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, again, it's up to India. It's up to India as to how it, there was a question earlier about China and whether, so India today is being looked into very, very positively as an investment destination by major countries. But it does not mean that we would be able to sort of sit back and get those investments to come in or get linked even to the supply chains that you are referring to, for which we need many, of course, I'm sorry for repeating it, but there is a need for us to be much more competitive, both in our policy front, which is we need to see how, for us to be engaged in a complete supply chain in the world, our entire XIM policy, so to say, export and import policy, the trade policy, would need to, we are focusing very strongly on to that, we are actually today in a country, in the world, companies decide investment on the basis of, today one of the biggest advantages for India is actually also the market that India offers. But the issue is going to be not just the Indian market, but also the global market. So we can export from India, we can link up to the world. So there is, again, a lot which depends on how we are able to handle our policy infrastructure, a policy ecosystem that we are really working on in terms of how global supply chains can be formed, where India can be a part of. And of course, to sort of also look at individual sectors. India, as you will well appreciate, we will be competitive on 1, 2, 3, 4. And we are not competitive on A, B, C, D. So it's important for us to focus on those areas of competitive, where we have a competitive advantage. And I think that's what we are focusing on, to try and grow and see that we are getting the best in the world to be invested out over here and linked to the supply chain, and give to the rest of the world for us, for them to really work on, and for us to take advantage of that. So we can't do everything. There is a give and take, and that's where I talked about the trade policy.
Thank you, sir.
One of our CII members 3 days ago was telling me, and this is good feedback for you as also everybody here, that in the past he has been traditionally exporting a lot to the US, and he's had to go there regularly, his colleagues had to go regularly to sell. He said, but the first time he's found that the people from US, his customers, they are actually coming over. And they're saying, listen, please do this for me extra, make this particular product, and also supply us more of our existing products. They're really, in a way, concerned about cutting off or restricting their China and increasing their India. So I think this point that Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee made, that it's a big opportunity. Opportunity may not last a very long time, but we should really maximize, whilst in a way the iron's hot, we must maximize this opportunity. And let me tell you, I know, and I'm sure you'll know more, that CII members are in fact doing so. But perhaps we can take one last question, because Father Tony has been indicating to me that we have to stay on time. No, you mean you're willing to make it 2 more questions? All right. So, yeah, there's a lady and a gentleman. They're both. Please send the mic.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Myself, Dr. Saurav Mondal from Computer Science Engineering Department. I have one question, that currently we are in the era of Industry 3.0, and the world and along with Indian industries are moving towards the Industry 4.0, and maybe after 10 to 15 years we are moving to Industry 5.0. So my question is that how Indian industries are moving in that direction in terms of implementation of Industry 4.0, and what kind of changes in the policy and in the job market we can expect in the near future in India.
So, like your college and others are really today focusing a lot for the future factory, the future of smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, and actually much of the world is looking at Industry 5.0, as you also referred to. So as you see, what's going to be very important and what we are also working on is something called the entire digital transformation. The large industries are pretty much set. Say, for instance, there is a smart manufacturing dashboard between India and certain parts of the world, where in that dashboard you can see, say, for instance, I'll take the name of a country, Germany or Sweden, where we see how smart manufacturing in that dashboard, certain best practices in those countries, and what are the benefits of it. So that dashboard becomes a sort of a case study learning for Indian companies. So that's something that is done. Second, as I referred, very important is the journey of digital transformation of our mid-sized companies and the larger and the small companies. That's going to be very critical and vital. When we talk about a complete moving over to an industry 4.0 over a period of time. It's just not the large companies. The large companies can do it on their own. They will do it, and they are doing it. And that's where your point on jobs for the future. So the jobs for the future, it will be largely coming out of those type of, if you really move on to that chain of industry 4.0 or 5.0, or a large number of small and medium companies in India. That's where the jobs are going to come from. The future of jobs will come from that. And they will get linked to the larger companies, the big companies, which will, so our biggest focus today is on digital transformation for the small and the mid-sized companies, which is extremely critical. And we have, again, in this case, like what we spoke about the startups, we have many companies which are very large and who has traversed that journey of Industry 4.0, who are engaged with certain centers of excellence which has been created on Industry 4.0 and digital transformation, with which they are working. So I think that's the way we will have to move forward to include the large manufacturing base of the country.
Do I see any more hands? Yeah, one in the back.
Good evening, sir. I'm Anupam Srivastava from the XIM BBM batch of 21-23. It was an absolute pleasure, sir. Thank you for entrusting us with the responsibility for India 100. So you've been involved in a lot of policy-making decisions, both at the national and state level. There are plenty of stakeholders involved in such kinds of decisions. You have to make sure that we are on a global platform, we are really competitive, and also make sure that the citizens of India who are actually going to be affected by it, their considerations, opinions are also taken into account. So, sir, how do you strike that delicate balance between ensuring global competition as well as ensuring that what's best for the people is finally going to be decided upon?
Last part I couldn't. How do you balance between global competition, you said, and?
Right, sir. So global competition and what's best for the people of the country.
You know what? This is a very. I would say that this is a very practical solution. When in 1991, I referred to it. When we were opening up, we thought that Indian industry will be wiped out. There was a section of Indian industry which felt that Indian industry would be wiped out because we are exposing them to global competition. But what happened actually is similarly what's going to happen as we move along is Indian industry proved itself that they can be globally competitive. In fact, they enhanced their competitiveness because they had to survive, and they found that they are actually very competitive. Number one. Number two, it also, the end consumer benefited with that competition. You was asking as to how people of India would benefit. If we are globally competitive, of course, it benefits the consumer at the end, because you get the product at a much more competitive price, or the service at a much more competitive price. So that's how the people of India would benefit. So opening up to global competition is important. But yes, wherever that is necessary, and I don't, sometimes, and I'm saying it in front of some industry doyens, if one can say, that sometimes Indian industry underestimates itself in terms of the power of competitiveness that it has globally. They are extremely competitive. As I said, the product of, and I strongly believe, goods and services sometimes manufactured in Indian companies are globally most competitive till it reaches the factory door. And after that, we have to probably manage. So that's where we come in to see, and slowly, therefore, and gradually, if we can see wherever these competitive advantages India have, if we can open up and expose ourselves, and we can dominate the world, and the end consumer and the end that's the people of India, would benefit the most out of that.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I think we've overshot the time by about 4 or 5 minutes. So unless somebody has a pressing question, can I request that we proceed? Thank you very much, and thank you for taking the questions.
Thank you, sir, for the insightful talk and the valuable knowledge that you have shared with us today. We are truly enthused and deeply appreciate your interesting thoughts and inspirational words. Now, may I request our registrar to please come on stage. Father S. Anthony Raj will now conduct the proceedings for the Long Service Medal ceremony.
Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to conduct the ceremony to award long service medals to our committed faculty and staff members. I invite Chairman Emeritus, Mr. Rajiv Kaul, and the Vice Chancellor to do the honors. Awardees for 25 years of service in the institution, Mr. K.C. Barik. Mr. Prem Chandra Nayak. Mr. Umesh Chandra Behra. Now we move on to those who are awarded for 15 years of service in the institution. Professor Shubhakant Padhi. Professor Sandeep Anand. Miss Sangeeta Shanti Barla. Mr. Sudarshan Gochayat. Congratulations to each one of you. Thank you, dignitaries. May I now invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor to propose the vote of thanks.
Shri Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry, and our Foundation Day speaker this evening, Shri Rajiv Kaul, Chairman Emeritus, Distinguished Member of the Board of Governors, Father S. Anthony Raj, Registrar, Dr. Sridhar Kumar Das, Dean Academics, Xavier Institute of Management, my dear faculty colleagues, staff, students, members of electronic and print media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Listening to Sri Chandrajit Banerjee this evening has been an enriching experience. I am sure that all of us have gained deeper insights and perspectives due to this lecture, which has been delivered by Sri Banerjee. His dynamic leadership, strong commitment to industrial growth, and warm personality has endeared him to all of us. We are also very happy for conferring honorary doctoral degree today to Sri Banerjee for his contribution to education and industry in general and to the society in particular. This truly has been an evening to remember. I express my deepest gratitude to Sri Banerjee for his inspiring and challenging thoughts and ideas that have elevated the standing of the Foundation Day lecture in the academic fraternity. Sir, your views would go a long way in shaping the minds and hearts of our young and aspiring managers present here. On behalf of the XIM University family, I deeply thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and delivering the Foundation Day lecture this evening. I thank Sri Rajiv Kaul, our past chairman, and presently the distinguished member of the Board of Governors, for his strong leadership and continuous support and effort in contacting our chief guest, Sri Banerjee, to be with us this evening. I thank our Board of Governors who are present here this evening for their time and presence. We are extremely proud and fortunate to have you all with us this evening at the Foundation Day lecture. Many thanks to all of you for being strong stakeholders in the institution building process of Xavier Institute of Management, XIM University. I am grateful to our friends from the electronic and print media for disseminating information on this program and also for being a great pillar of strength for the institutional development process of Xavier Institute of Management, XIM University in India and abroad. On behalf of XIM University, I thank you all for your kind presence and coverage of this event. My heartfelt thanks go out to many well-wishers of XIM University who are gathered here this evening and have a deep and genuine concern for the progress of the university in Odisha. Last but not the least, I thank all the administrative team members headed by Father Registrar, faculty, staff, and students for their strong commitment and active participation in this program. Many people have worked hard behind the scenes for making this program a great success. I offer my sincere and heartfelt thanks to each one of them for their selfless dedication and for helping in the smooth functioning of this program. Once again, I thank all of you for being with us this evening, and I thank Sri Chandrajit Banerjee for the inspiring Foundation Day lecture. May God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, for those encouraging and generous words. May I request the gathering to rise for the national anthem.
अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उत्कल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता
Ladies and gentlemen, I may now request you all to seat yourselves. We have now come to the end of the Foundation Day celebration. I request the audience to remain seated till the dignitaries leave the auditorium.